Like Simon, Andrew was a sorcerer. He was an old friend of their dad's and a former employee of the Edison Group. He was also their emergency contact. Andrew and their dad had some kind of falling out a few years ago, but they'd stayed in contact, so when we'd been stuck, we'd come to him. Andrew gave Derek's shoulder one last squeeze. Then he bustled about the kitchen, getting out plates and rinsing them off, wiping dust from the counters and the table, asking how we'd slept, apologizing again for the lack of preparation.
"Hard to prepare when you don't know anyone's coming," Simon said. "Is this going to be okay? You staying here with us? I know you've got work." "Which I've been doing from home for 2 years now. Finally built up the seniority to start telecommuting, thank God. The daily trips into New York were killing me. I go once a week now for meetings."
Simon turned to me.
"Andrew's an editor. Books."
He glanced at Andrew.
"Chloe's a screenwriter."
I blushed and stammered that obviously I wasn't a real screenwriter, just a wannabe. But Andrew said he'd love to hear about what I was working on, answer any questions about writing. He even sounded like he meant it, unlike most adults who just say things like that to humor you.
"Right now, she's working on a comic with me," Simon said. "A graphic journal of our adventures, just for fun." "Very cool. I take it you're doing the art? Your dad told me you're—"
The doorbell rang.
"And that would be breakfast," Andrew said. "Chloe, I know Tori's probably exhausted, but she should be here for the meeting."
"I'll go wake her up." So, the mysterious resistance group was here. It didn't look like much, 3 people plus Andrew. There was Margaret, who looked like a lot of the women my dad worked with, a corporate business type, tall with graying brown hair cut short. She was a necro-mancer. Gwen wasn't much taller than me and barely looked out of college. As for supernatural type, with her short blonde hair, turned-up nose, and sharp chin, I started wondering if there was such a thing as a pixie, but she said she was a witch, like Tori. The third newcomer was Russell, a bald, grandfatherly guy who was a shaman paramedic, in case we needed medical attention after our ordeal. With Andrew and Margaret, he was one of the group's founding members and had also once worked for the Edison Group. Andrew said there were another 6 members in the New York City area, and 20 or so more across the country. Under the circumstances, though, it didn't seem safe to have them all trooping up here to meet us. So they'd sent the ones who could help us the most, a necromancer and a witch. Derek was out of luck. There weren't any werewolves in the group. Not surprising, given that there were maybe a couple dozen in the country, compared to hundreds of necromancers and spellcasters. The supernaturals who joined the Edison Group weren't evil. Most were like my aunt, who offered her services as a doctor because she wanted to help people like her brother, a necromancer who'd either committed suicide or been driven off a roof by ghosts when he was still in college. The Edison Group believed that the answer was genetic manipulation. Tweak our DNA to minimize side effects and improve our control over our powers. Things started going wrong back when we were little, and 3 of the werewolf subjects attacked a nurse. They were eliminated, killed, by the same people who swore they were trying to help supernaturals. That's when Simon's dad and others, like Andrew, left. But leaving wasn't enough for some. Concerned about what they'd seen, they'd monitored the Edison Group, making sure they didn't pose a threat to other supernaturals. Now, we were bringing news of exactly what they'd feared most. For many of us, the genetic modification had backfired, producing kids with uncontrollable powers, witches who could cast without incantations, and necromancers who could raise the dead by accident. When those failures hadn't proved as easy to control as the Edison Group had hoped, they'd done the same thing they'd done to the werewolf boys. Killed them. Now, we'd come to Andrew's group for help.